Hello, and welcome to the Conscious Communion podcast, where we traverse through the inner dwellings of the human experience through conversation. I'm your host, Danae. Join me as we explore the interconnection of creativity and community. Jenny Lee is a musician, healing artist, coach, and teacher with skill for courting truth as a pathway for personal and planetary healing. She offers bodywork, ceremonial breathwork, teaches vocal empowerment, and hosts a yearly women's gathering. She tends to the land with her animals in Hood River, Oregon, plays music in dimly lit bars, writes poetry for lovers, and loves to move her body under the sun. She is a well-studied, wild-crafted wisdom keeper, a playful coyote woman, and a loving friend on this journey of becoming. Here is Jenny Lee. Hello, sweet one.
I just had a deja vu when you were saying that.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fun.
I get them all these days, yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
So sweet. I met Jenny at a beautiful women's gathering in January and was blessed to sit in ceremony with her in her breath ceremony that she guided, and also in a vocal empowerment session. And then I also was able to have a one-on-one vocal empowerment session with her. So I have been able to intimately dive into her magic and the wholeness that she brings to sacred spaces. And I couldn't be more grateful for the energy that she brings and all that she is. So really, really happy to have you here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. I love the way that you are opening up so many multifaceted conversations with people, and there's nothing more fun to me than just shooting the shit about things that matter, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. I would love to just get a little feel for how this all started for you, right? There's always a beginning. There's always an origin story. And I think that it's super fun as a storyteller to give a little insight, because most folks that are doing this work on any capacity have gone through some shit. So would love for you to just give a little bit of background on how you've moved through that to be where you are today and speaking your truth and empowering others to do the same.
Oh, shit. Okay, I'm going to preface with a tangent. Have you seen The Life of Pi?
Yeah.
The movie? Okay. We watched it last night. It was my second time. And I'm reminded of the art of storytelling of one's journey. And there's two ways to tell the story, right? There's like the story where Pi is with all these horrible people and like his mother dies and there's like all this horror, or there's the same story, but with this different mythopoetical lens that's just magnificent, and you can't like not tell the more beautiful story. Mm-hmm. All this to say, I think I'm still like working on my tiger version story, where it's like I crave the incredibly poetic story. I crave that version where I'm the tiger and all these, and there was the island and all these things, but you know, I'm still working on it. And so my working on it version of the story starts probably at the reality that, well, I'm going to challenge myself. I'm going to not start my story at the trauma, which is what I've always done. My story started much younger. My dad has been a musician my whole life, a phenomenal musician, an incredible singer and keyboard player and harmonica player. And he was like the rock star of Spokane, Washington, where I was from. And I had my birth parents were separated since I was like 1. And my dad, I think consciously, unconsciously, was always like the Renaissance man. He was a painter. He was a poet. He was a musician. He had all the fun. He was always in a good mood. And I was very much my father's child. And so I was very creative from a very young age. Specifically, at the age of 10, I lost both my mothers within 6 months. And I was just like my father's child. And it, despite his flaws in parenting, he offered a lot of insight on how life can be fun and life can be creative. And so I grew up with very little parenting, but a lot of value on play, on joy, on connection, and on creativity, on music and poetry and all these things. And so I think I'm just a product of my childhood, like we all are. And I have the privilege of being the daughter of an artist, and also the folly of something that we were talking about earlier. I grew up with no religion. I grew up with no God. And so there wasn't, later on in my journey of like being really fucking curious and feeling my own opening to the more than me realm over and over and over again, but having no one was telling me what that was. I wasn't given the map that most people are given in like classical religion of any variety. And so it was very like feral. I got to just like make it up as I go. And there was less to unwind, but so much more to build. So much more that I was like needing and wanting. So I think my life path has been one of less deconditioning and more of like seeking what I value, learning how to respect my elders, for God's sake, learning what God means to me, learning, like everything, it feels exciting. But it comes from a world where I feel like I was not given enough. So there's a bit of this like, okay, here's my tiger story. There's a bit of like hunger, like, like I want to know, I want to explore. And I have this passion, that story leading up to me now at 33 is like reconciling with, not actually having as much energy as I used to. But maybe the biggest experience of my adult life was having bulimia from the age of like 20 to 30, which just created a reality where I was multiple things all at the same time, which some could say is the same definition of like a spiritual experience, but with no context, it was just very like self-sabotaging. But that was like the hardest time of my life and also the most cultivating in a way. But now all of these things have led me to this like now moment where I give a shit about truth. I give a shit about expression. And I really care about wellness that includes a lot of self-acceptance, because if it doesn't, then it's not wellness. And I think I'm just really a philosopher at heart. I just have more questions and I actually give a shit about answers. And that's, is potentially popular, potentially really unpopular in a world that's really looking like it's really, there's a lot of focus on solution-based healing instead of maybe wonder-based healing or something like this. But I feel like I've lived 10,000 lives within the one, and I'm happy to just be here with you now in this iteration.
Yeah, this iteration. That's really beautiful. And I think a lot of us could learn from having more childlike wonder, having more of an open heart to stay curious, and to ask more questions. I think that we are given such an incredible opportunity when we ask more questions. And I can see that you are really good at asking questions. You are. You're good at asking yourself questions. Even just in the few times that I've been in your presence, the questions are potent and they get to the root of some really uncomfortable things sometimes. Even in our one-on-one, you asked me some questions that I had never asked myself before.
Yeah.
And I asked myself a lot of questions, but those were they hit some chords and they help stir some stuff up. So what do you do for the folks that you work with to invigorate that in themselves? Because there's an activation that I know that takes place, and we're mirrors for each other, but how does that position kind of stir and take place with your one-on-ones and with your circles?
I mean, what comes up immediately is like the sense of bravery and an intimacy, you know, like if and charm and just good old fashioned charisma. Like if there's enough rapport that we can build, then I'm allowed to be a little sassy with my question asking. You know, like there's my father was a romantic, you know, and I was like, oh, you're uncomfortable here, interesting. I'm gonna keep leaning in. But something that that is less like the hyper trauma informed psychological realm and more into the intimacy and sensuality maybe of just like human to human connection. And I'm not alone in being like an emotional empath. Like everybody, you know, it's just like we feel the feels. And so I think I've cultivated a lot of self-permission to go there with people. And I've had the gift, the pleasure, the privilege of like getting it royally wrong a lot. Like I've been canceled publicly like twice in horrific ways. I've been kicked off stage. I've been uninvited to family dinners. Like, you know, like all the things that somebody would and very much should be afraid of happening have happened. And it's gifted me the experience to be like, oh my God, it just like, okay, these things have happened and I'm fine. And I still feel love. I still feel curiosity, like you're saying. And so it's almost like in some of my vocal empowerment work, I like to just remind people that like their failures are actually just like fortifying experiences to create a larger capacity so that, you know, maybe in a one-on-one conversation with anybody in any dynamic, if I'm less afraid of what you're going to think about me, I can actually love you quite a bit better. Do you know what I mean?
1,000%. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that's helpful for us all to hear. I think that we can become so fear-based in our response to how we think will be perceived instead of just allowing ourselves to be us fully, wholly, and completely. Yeah. And that's what you really help people with, tapping into their wholeness, finding that in themselves. And that's because you've done the work I know it's a constant dance, right? You're always having to do the work to find that wholeness. It's a process, but you're doing it consciously. You're making the decision to ask the questions to forever find the wholeness.
Yeah. You know, and I think of like, what's the definition of wholeness, right? What's the definition of all kinds of shit that we talk about? And you know, one of the simplest definitions of wholeness is all these different parts of oneself are connecting to each other. And so if I'm seeking a wholeness as an experience, then I could say it's easily connection based. So in our culture, it's very common that most of us prefer to be right than we prefer to be connected to somebody. And like, I get it. Being right feels good, like to some parts of me, but not like the wholeness of me. But I just like honestly feel like life gets way more fun and beautiful. And it's like taking all of this sense of self and just fucking dropping it on the ground and like, okay, technically nobody can ever be right and nobody can ever be wrong. Like that's a conversation that's outside of what we're here to talk about today. And I think we all know that on some level. And so if the game of who's right, who's wrong, power over, power under is just like a flaccid conversation, then like the cooler thing, the more like artistic thing to do is just to be like, wow, what's that like for you? Maybe in the back of my mind, I'm like, you are fucking dumb. You have no idea what you're talking about or whatever I think that I know. But what I think that I know about you is only going to get in the way of us actually connecting. At the end of the day, wholeness requires connection, right? So it's like, okay, well, if I want to be right, then I'm going to keep living this like in the false narrative of that I'm separate from fill in the blank. Everything.
So good. Everything, right? False narrative. Yeah. We're not apart.
But we have piles of data to prove that we absolutely are separate. The modern world is quite skilled at reminding us through data and reason and logic that I am different from these adorable pear trees that I'm looking at. Our skin looks different. I don't make pears. They make pears. I'm pretty sure we're different. Or you and me, right? Like we have completely different histories, childhood experiences, partnerships. You know, there's like, I think we're wired conditionally to understand and to energetically track the ways that we're different. Instead of what would it be like to live in a world where we are wired to energetically track the ways that we're similar, first and foremost, instead of the ways that we're different, you know? Mm-hmm. I think that's like, talk about a paradigm shift, you know, of all the ways that we could create a more beautiful world, as Charles Eisenstein proliferates, you know, like, what if we were just trained to notice our kinship before we notice our differences? And I mean, honestly, that part is going to take a few generations to really like sink in.
Yeah. I think we're just starting to uncover some of these modalities and these remembrances that our ancestors were a little more in touch with, right? Yeah. And not being separate. And I think even the work that you do as a breath space holder, because really you're creating sweet, sweet ceremony. And that is such an incredible indicator of the return to the sacred wholeness, that we are not apart. And I remember sitting in ceremony with you as the space holder, and most of the women in the group had the same experience of feeling together. We didn't feel like we were separate, and we felt this remembrance and this return to the feminine embodiment of all that we are. And it was really powerful. It was really powerful. And I would love to hear how you get in your groove, how you get into that space of letting spirit be the guide, to remind us, to bring us back to the remembrance that we are not apart, that we're together in all of this that we're doing in this human experience, right? How does that, like, what does that process look like for you?
Oh God, I wish I had like a really cool answer. I feel like the answer is just a very simple prayer, like the one that you offered us here at the beginning of this call, you know, of like, Great Spirit, may I not get in the way here? May I not be so here that I get in the way of the divine life force energy that animates all of life is doing the work, you know. And my beautiful breathwave teacher, Robin Clements from Canada, he's incredibly wise, but also just like reminds us of the simplicity of like, just get out of the way. Just get out of the way. Lord knows the breath knows what to do. Lord knows that when people gather in circle and they share their prayer and they share their intention, they open their heart and let themselves be seen in the places that are hurting, and they're willing to like lay it down and just attempt to feel better. I mean, what vulnerable and intimate space. I mean, that alone, I mean, I think so much of my groove is deeply trusting the field that it knows what it's doing. The field is another word for God to me, of like God, the great listener, or God, the great geometry, that when I speak a word, it like becomes it shifts the geometry. Like, I don't know. I do not know. And I'm not needing to know. But there's, and through practice and through, you know, like good old fashioned trial and error, through like definitely getting in the way quite a few times, that I'm like, oh, it's not about me loving this person so that they feel better. It's about the space opening up, and I am a tool for the collective intelligence to use, and I'll know when to offer hands-on facilitation to somebody, and I'll trust myself if I feel like not. And kind of removing myself from the good or bad, or removing myself from, ironically, the performer in me, right? Like, I've been a musician longer than I've been anything else, and I used to have horrific stage fright. Like, if I was going to sing you a song, I'd be like, okay, you close your eyes. Or I would be like, okay, I'm just going to turn around and play you a song. And it was very cute, but it was like a lot of that until I was probably like mid-20s. And similarly, if I am playing my song, I'm going to have some anxiety and some feels about it. Or if the sound of life is moving through my body, I like don't have to take it so seriously. And so I feel like the groove is like becoming porous to God, or becoming porous to life. Like, life is just moving through me, and in that way I can trust it. And then I still have my very human dramatic experiences of like being over identified with what's moving through, like feelings, right? Like, I am a very dramatic person. And when things move through me, I'm like, oh, what's happening? I should learn about this thing. And like, what do I feel about? But I think that specifically in like space holding with the breath, you know, like the breath is doing the heavy lifting. The breath is doing the work. And the reason I love breath work, so I do massage therapy, you know, where like, if I'm giving you a massage, I'm doing the work. Lord knows I'm doing the work. My shoulders tell me that I'm doing the work. But with breath work, it's like you're breathing, you're surrendering, you're letting go, you're having your own internal experience. I'm just kind of like keeping the cats in the corral, you know, but like it's a process that's so fun to me because it's emphasis on self-healing, personal empowerment, becoming your own guru. Like, you know, like we'll do a breath circle like the one that you and I had, and then someone says something that happened, and I'm just like, what? Really? That's amazing. I had no idea. I'm just like singing and offering words of affirmation, but the real like wow that comes through in that space like comes from you, and it comes from within each person. And so I think most of it comes back to, can I just get out of the way? Which is a lot easier said than done.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, because even being a student of the breath, there's part of that is there's ego involved. It's like, it's so fascinating how you just then have to interweave everything you've learned to then just being the vessel and allowing spirit, force, the great creator, whatever anyone wants to call it, just move through you, and you hold the space, and you do it so well. You do it with so much grace. And then when you bring in, what I love about your work specifically is that you interweave your creative endeavors into this really just incredible artistic masterpiece. And it's beautiful. It really is beautiful to hear your voice, your powerful, powerful voice, and the rhythms that you create with your drum when you're breathing. It's like, ooh, it's a portal. And yeah, it's just, it's such beautiful art. So thank you for being the vessel.
You're so kind. Thank you.
I'd love to hear about your process with just that. Your artistic expression with singing, with making sounds and letting sounds move through you.
It's very similar, I think, with like the getting out of the way. Yeah, and I was really, really, really stage fright as a kid. And I'm at a point where I get off on being heard. I'm like, no, you fucking listen to me. If I'm playing music at a restaurant and nobody's listening, I'm like having a hard time. It's gotten to the point where this is funny to say out loud, feed off of the energy of the people that they're giving me energy, and I can put that energy in my body and give it back. But somewhere along the line of trying to be good at singing, I wish there was a cool story, once again, the mythopoetic story. I ate 17 grams of mushrooms and had this, I don't have that yet. But somewhere along the line, I felt this shift from singing for you to singing for me. And maybe a little hedonistic about it. It feels really good to just be loud. It feels like when the body's the instrument, it's pleasurable for me to sing. And then if I'm in my frequency of pleasure, then that's the frequency that other people are going to feel, whether or not I sing a good note or not. So, a side note, I just recorded a live album and did a Kickstarter, recorded the live album, had one of the best nights of my life. But the thing about endorphins and adrenaline is that it masks errors. And so I'm currently in the process of going back and listening to the live album and editing it. And I'm like, how many flat notes can a girl sing in a night? There's a lot. There's a lot of them. And in the moment, I have no idea. I think probably that last note was flat, but the song continues. And it's just there's something about being in the moment and just having fun and singing from the heart that maybe, oh my God, this is hilarious. Maybe it's beer goggles, where you're just I love you. I love your energy. This feels good. And then, the process of going back and listening to the show is more of oh, this is for other people. What are they going to think? That note seems weird. This one whole song, I'm just yelling the whole thing. Why am I doing that? But in the moment, I have to remember, I didn't give a fuck about any of those things in the moment. It was just this human expressing life force energy. And the more fun that I had, the more that I was in joy. The whole audience was just with me in that. And so I think there's something about not, once again, not feeding into the narratives of what a good singer or bad singer or good and bad fill in the blank is, but are you fully in it or not? And the way that I was, after that show, the way that I was met with so much love from my community, I could have swore I never sang one bad note in my life. And then listening back to it, I'm just oh, geez. It was a phenomenally imperfect show. There's a few songs out of the 12 that aren't even good enough to put on the live album. We fucked up. But it doesn't matter when you do it for like the right reason. You know what I mean? So maybe in like a breath ceremony, I just have a lifelong history of singing, so I just have a lot of comfortability and like skill developed. But when I've been sang to by another breathway facilitator or something like this, and they're just like on paper, maybe not that good, but you can just hear the sincerity in their voice. You can hear the bravery that it takes for them to sing you a song, when you can kind of hear like the fear and like the little wigglies in their voice. And it's just so endearing and opening. And it's just like, wait a minute, you know, maybe to reference the old God again, we have a voice for a reason. You know, and singing is one of the oldest forms of human expression on the planet. And it surely couldn't have always been to be the Mariah Careys of the world. And the fact that it's gotten that good is fun. And I think this is the last thing I'll say on this. Vocal empowerment started as singing lessons. And it started with our mutual friend, Bailey. And I went over to her house and we just started talking about like singing techniques. And then it was just like, oh my God, this has nothing to do with singing. This has to do with how you feel about yourself. And then through that, the gift of singing is like a symptom of someone who's just comfortable being what they are, or something like this.
Yeah.
That's a long-winded answer to your question.
No, that's so, and I think that's helpful because anyone could sing to themselves and it will be medicine. It's been since our session, and I can't wait until I get back from Japan to have more. But since our session, I've been sitting with my sound bowl and just making sounds. It doesn't, and it just feels good. It just feels good. And I want to say, because I think it's important, in your session that you held for all of us at the women's group, so many of these incredible women were around the circle. And as you were holding the vocal empowerment session, you were encouraging us to sing and to hold notes that felt good in our bodies. And all of these women, in my experience, sound like angels. Most incredible voices I've heard, right? You start and just like blow us out of the water. It's just wild. And then continue around the circle. Everyone has a good voice. And it hits me and my voice totally cracks. And you said something that has struck a chord in me and it changed me. It's not about how it sounds. It's about how it feels. And it felt like it was something that was just cracking me open. That, fuck yeah. Like, yes, I want more of that. I want more of that liberation. Yes, yeah. Please. And we should all want that for ourselves. Yeah, I think we do, but we're all fucking terrified. Because at first, your voice is going to definitely crack. You're going to sing all the flat notes. You're going to get kicked off stage for being too drunk. All the things are going to happen. and they're like necessary terrors on the path of feeling comfortable in one's own skin or something, right? Like, I don't know if being really comfortable in your own sense of being is possible. It might be, but I'm only looking through my own lens and I'm just like, no, suffering's the only path. But I don't know if it's possible to be like really comfortable with who you are unless you've like fucked up. Unless you've done it wrong, unless you've said that thing that you couldn't take back, unless you've like hurt someone's feelings, unless you've done an unforgivable act or whatever, or all of the above. I think the path to wholeness is not paved with good deeds. I think it's paved with like piles and piles of forgiveness for the many ways that the human experience is just trying to find connection and doesn't know how to.
So we make an ass out of ourselves and each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what does that practice look? I know that you have a class coming up and I'm so excited for you for that. What does that look like when you get to work with clients? Because even just having one session with you, our session was really about getting to those uncomfortable conversations about using your voice. So what does it also look like for you to interweave then the use of your voice and to use that as a practice, almost like medicine, right?
Almost like.
Yeah, almost like, or just like, yeah. How do you interweave those two things?
I think the course that I teach, my little flagship course, is an 8-week online course called Truth Training. They used to just be called vocal empowerment, but then people kept thinking it was a lot more about singing. And it's like not about singing, but it's not about singing. You know, it's about everything that our voice does. I mean, I'm a professional singer and I'm singing 0.5% of my life. You know, it's like that singing is such a small portion of my expression. And so I am who I am, and I'm intense. And I can't not be intense, but I'm kind and I'm funny. So the way that I've crafted truth training is to start at the problem, which is to start at fear, right? Like, what are you afraid of that's getting in the way of you radically, fully, authentically expressing yourself at all times? And I've only been doing this work for like 3 years, and there is a clear pattern that shows up. 9 out of 9 folks is afraid, unless you're that like 1% that's like, I'm afraid the earth is going to die. And I'm like, okay, how is that getting in the way of your self-expression? I'm not sure, but I think that's a valid fear. However, context. Everybody is afraid of what other people think. And so if everybody is not expressing themselves authentically, speaking their truth, singing their damn crazy songs, or just living an honest life because they're afraid of what other people think, it's no longer a throat chakra problem. It's a root chakra problem. Because the root chakra is our connection to tribe, our feeling of safety in the world. So imagine this. I've worked with hundreds of people over the past 3 years. Every single one of them is afraid to express themselves and to be who they really are because they're afraid of what other people think. So let's say that that's true for most people, not just the folks that I've worked with. So that means that when I go to the grocery store, almost everybody in that grocery store is afraid of each other. That's fucking nuts. So we have a culture here in the West that is broadly, not everybody, but let's say the gross majority, not gross isn't like yuck, but gross isn't a lot. The gross majority is walking around shopping, wine tasting, grocery shopping, hanging out with a group of friends that they even know and love. And throughout all of it, they're underlyingly terrified of each other. This is something that I feel like we have very little capacity to be really honest about. And so this is where truth training starts. It's just like holding presence with this like new way of seeing the world, kind of, you know, like, wait a minute, like friend's baby shower, women's gathering, whatever, fill in the blank. Like, and there's the conscious thoughts and then there's the unconscious thoughts, you know, but broadly, most of us are really running these programs of like, oh my God, what are they going to think? Am I going to do it wrong? And it's not only taking up a lot of chi, it's taking up a lot of vital life force energy to be afraid of each other, but it's creating a culture. It's creating a culture that's kind of becoming its own like super twisted self-fulfilling prophecy, in my not so humble opinion. And so I try to start at fear and help people realize that fear is like welcome. It's okay. And I created this like little, I don't know if we ended up doing it or not. The renegotiate the terms of agreements with your fear thing. Super fun, super edgy. A lot of my work is actually influenced by two Carolyns, ironically. Carolyn Elliott, who wrote the book Existential Kink. Phenomenal at like shadow integration work and living in liberation through self-awareness and self-acceptance. That's like my life path. And then Carolyn Meese, who wrote many, many books. She's like our modern day mystic grandma archetype. She's amazing. And she helped me understand like the mystical side of the throat chakra. But we get to there from Carolyn Elliott's work, which is a lot of the fear work. And maybe just like show you what that would look like. So basically all fears serve a purpose or they would not exist. And so it's a way to like befriend yourself a little bit more. And so let's say I have a fear of sounding stupid on podcasts, right? I can write that fear down, and that fear is protecting me from feeling something that I don't want to feel. I have a belief that all fears are based in feeling as well. Because every abstract conceptual idea is rooted in like a somatic feeling, you know? Mm-hmm. But this fear is also limiting me from and blocking me from feeling something that I really, really want to feel. So it's keeping me from feeling embarrassed, but it's preventing me from feeling like a genius or something, right? And so the way that I help people just start at this like fundamental level of fear work is like, okay, great. So you're afraid to be embarrassed. And this fear is preventing you from feeling, you know, rooted in your genius. Let's just get left-brained about it. Is the reality of being embarrassed so bad? Is it so bad that you're willing to not feel rooted in your genius? Right? Because they're on a spectrum. You can't have one without the other, apparently. Like we have this little window of emotionality. And what I want to feel is over here. What I don't want to feel is over here. So if you open the window, it opens in all directions. And so the funnest part, I think, of truth training is just like something that I would call like just holy willingness. The willingness to be wrong in order to feel all that you want to feel. And this is so far beyond just vocal empowerment. You know, like I'm willing to take up too much space in order to feel like I'm fully expressed. I'm willing for some people to think that I'm selfish in order for me to have the level of self-care that I know that I'm worthy of, or fill in the blank. Like it can go in all different directions, but I think there's a beauty in looking at the paradox of how what we don't want to feel and what we do want to feel are like inseparable. If you want to feel what you want to feel, not a guarantee. Me being rooted in my genius doesn't guarantee that I'm going to look stupid, but I have to be okay with it if it happens. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of where we start. And then we move into like trauma, and we move into sound. We move into like the mystical energy of the throat chakra. We go into a lot of relationships because everything kind of comes back to relationships. We go into breath. We traverse a lot of different domains, and it's quite comprehensive. I used to be afraid that it was like too much for people. But then I like tried to take my own medicine, and I'm like, okay, I'm willing to be too much for some people if I want to be just the right thing for the right people, you know. And also, I'm sure you know the pain of creating a course or something that I now have to forever be the student of. Every time I launch truth training, I go through these like being raked through the coals where I feel like the great mystery is like, are you sure you can teach this? And I'm like, fuck yes, no more. But I always get tested a little bit on, yeah, are you sure you value honesty? Are you sure you're willing to look wrong in order to know that you're right, or whatever, fill in the blank of the way that I have to walk the talk, or else I'm a horrible teacher. And I think that's a lot of it too, is just the level of self-acceptance that comes, and from that place, the song is a symptom, you know.
The song is a symptom. I love that. Yeah, I'm curious how you work with the stickiness, the crunchy of feeling imposter syndrome, because I think so many creators experience that, but you're creating on so many different facets. You are an artist, you are a space holder, you are a teacher, like you're a masseuse, like even that, just putting hands on someone's body, like there's so many different facets to how you are contributing to this work of holding space for others. So what does that look like? What does your process look like for you to move through that and integrate your darkness and dance with your darkness and just sit with it and be okay with it and accept it? I know so much of it goes back to the truth training, but what does your personal relationship look like with that process?
Oh my gosh, even as you're saying that, I'm just like, what's wrong with being an imposter? Who said being an imposter was bad? Being an imposter means that I care about something. If I'm trying to be you, that means that I care about you. You know, like
that's
everything
so good.
is a fucking bad rap, you know? And
totally.
And I paid a lot of money to go to massage school. I paid to go be a massage imposter, kind of. Anybody who got a college degree, it was like paying into this reality where we like fake it till we make it.
Totally.
You know, and I think it can be really maddening, and I mean it in like the most real version of the word maddening, to constantly, okay, this is interesting. I'm looking at the pear trees a lot while we're talking, and it's really good medicine for me. All the pear trees are the same, and every single pear tree is different. And I think our culture here in the West is so focused on hyper-individuality, so focused on don't be the imposter, don't be like somebody else. Instead of like, what if all the pear trees are technically different, but what if that pear tree didn't know how to be a pear tree unless it had another pear tree? You know, like I wouldn't know how to be a massage therapist unless it was for other massage therapists. I wouldn't know how to give a massage unless I knew how to receive. And by the way, I just had a life-changing massage 2 days ago, and I cried. And I'm like, I need to receive that so that I remember what I'm doing, you know? And I think we all want to be different and special. And if I start a podcast, I want to be different than your podcast. And it's just like, that's like fair. That's totally normal and totally fair. And like, and I'm speaking this, and I don't live it all the time, and I'm aware of that, so I'm just going to name that. But what if, you know, there's a world that we could continue to practice living into, where we valued, once again, the ways that we're similar instead of always trying to be different. And I wonder, because that's all I really do is ask questions instead of answer them, is if, kind of like we were mentioning earlier, right? If we're so focused and we're hyper vigilantly attuned to our differences instead of the ways that we're kin, instead of the ways that we're similar, then no shit. When I go to like be somebody, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to want to be different instead of like enjoy the humility of being like somebody that I admire. If someone, so okay, I have a lot of tattoos. Back in the day, a girlfriend I had this like raindrop tattoo here. It was during the middle of my eating disorder, and I got it as a reminder to drink water. It looks like a prison tattoo. I had a homegirl get the same tattoo, and she was like, "Are you mad at me?" And I'm like, I don't own that tattoo idea. And I'm actually flattered that you would want the same tattoo. Look, we can be part of the same club. We can be part of the drink water club. You know, like whatever. The more the merrier. And I remember back in the day, like, how we're all so conditioned to, like, if I get the same sweater you have, like, that could be a compliment. Or you could be like, what the fuck is she doing? What? Get your own damn sweater. You know, and so I think a lot of this contemplation comes back into like a culture that is obsessed with being different from each other, which I think is a symptom of a culture that's lost its connection to source, that's lost its connection to kinship. And other cultures that are more connected to each other, I don't think have the same obsession with being different. You know what I mean? I think they're like, oh my God, we have the same outfit on. Amazing. How cute are we? You know, and maybe this is the thing that changes is like we just mature and grow wiser and older, but I've never said it quite like that. And so I'm really grateful for the question, but it feels like, once again, there's just like a symptom. And this is something too around like vocal empowerment or breathwork or whatever the thing that people come to you for, you know, it's like, it's not your fault. It's not anybody's fault that we're twisted. Like, we live in a strange culture on strange land here in America with a strange history. And there's so much shame. There's so much like, if we're separate from each other, then we don't have to feel guilt, or we don't have to feel bad. We don't have to feel each other. We don't have to feel anything, for God's sake. You know, and so often I just kind of come back to like the personal healing can't be separate from just like holding a lot of compassion that we're just in this shape because the world put us in this shape. You know, like I didn't put myself in this shape. I was born, had my childhood experiences in this culture, in this world, during this time. And it made me like this, you know? And so it's just like, okay, like I'm going to show up and do the work. I'm going to do the healing that I can and fill in the blank. And I think part of my contemplation recently has been how like personal healing and personal development is the same as like cultural evolution and community well-being. And if like I personally empower my voice and that doesn't end up like feeding my community or being of service to my community, then like what's the point?
1,000%.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking the questions. Honestly, it's so refreshing. It's sobering. It brings me into the childlike wonder that we were talking about. I don't know if we were talking about it on the podcast or if we were talking about it before. I think we were talking about it before, but the questions really bring you into this spaciousness. It doesn't need to be confined. And what an opportunity to just look, stay curious, ask more questions, and let the questions lead you to more questions. It's just fun.
And I think that's like illuminating a huge piece of our world that's so knowledge-based, answer-focused. And I think maybe it even comes from just like, I feel comfortable if I know a thing or I know what's going to happen, I'll feel better. And not everybody has had enough time. It's a funny way to say it. Not everyone's had enough time to practice feeling safe being in wonder, being in awe, being like, I have no idea. Someone asks you a question, like, I mean, my current relationship is one of those like, wow moments, you know. I can say it here. I'm dating my ex-boyfriend's ex-best friend, and we all live together. And that was one of those like, wow, this shouldn't have happened. There's rules that say that no, and what, wow, but love does what it does. And there's so little rules actually. And I think learning how to feel safe in the not knowing, feel safe in the mystery is easier said than done, once again. And it's not everybody can feel safe based on your story, based on what you've experienced, you know, and maybe we live in a highly traumatized culture. We live on a highly traumatized land. If you think of that, once again, the history of this land, and with the histories that we all carry, no shit. It doesn't feel good to not know. I think like the Western mind's quest for control is once again a symptom of disassociation from self or from God or from culture, from meaning, from ritual, from all kinds of things. Yeah, I'm saying this word symptom a lot, and that's interesting. But it's fun to kind of have this moment with you in conversation and just remember the longer timelines that have created the realities that we're currently existing in. You know, it's a kind of feel like we're the product of something that shifted how long ago? And maybe this is a point of like pro vocal empowerment, pro breathwork conversation of like, okay, yes, do it for your one lifetime right now. Life is more fun when you can speak your truth and live in your honesty. And not easier, but more fun. And if these things start to take root, then maybe the fifth generation from here in the future will be born into a less contorted, separate, individualistic, focused reality or something. And wouldn't that be cool?
Fuck yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's been something that's been coming up a lot for my husband and I, where we're like, we can make up our own fucking rules. And it's hard though, because we were not raised like that. Like neither of us were raised like that. We were raised with constructs and boxes and you have to be like this. Probably more so me than him. He was given a little more freedom and he has been the constant reminder. You get to make up your own rules. You don't have to do it like that anymore. We don't have to do it like that anymore. And it's been a cycle for, I think, so many folks. But it's coming into exactly what you said, which is the safety aspect. And I know that it's a privilege to feel safe. Mm-hmm. But again, that symptom and just reconditioning that symptom to being the opportunity. That's also another piece to the puzzle, right? Being able to look at it as almost the portal to being able to go and, you know, sit in ceremony with you in a breathwave ceremony, or being able to go and sit and learn from you in a vocal empowerment one-on-one or in your course that you'll be launching, and going and getting that facilitation, because we're not meant to do it alone, first of all. Yeah. And yay for the support for people who have already walked the path of asking the questions, right?
Yeah. That's a huge piece too, I think, with a lot of like the breathwork circles or the online courses, you know, they're just more fun because there's other people that you just get to share your experience with. And I love that accountability. It's like going to yoga. I can do yoga on my own. But if I go to class, like I just do better. You know, I'm like more focused for sure. I'm stronger or whatever it might be. And we get to like use each other in a really beautiful way to have more of that accountability or more of that. I mean, when I do vocal empowerment work and we go to the fear thing in a group, I always ask people, I'm like, hey, how many of you thought you were alone in what you were afraid of? Everybody raises their hand. And I'm like, how many of you feel the same fear that somebody else had just said? Everybody raises their hand, and you're like, well, isn't that interesting? Mm-hmm. And then, once again, you just kind of, you leave more connected to other people and yourself than before. And that's the only thing you get out of a breath ceremony. That's the only thing you get out of a truth training class. Then it's a win. Because I think that's the fundamental schism in our world, is this constant confusion of disconnection, And so when we learn how to connect to ourselves, we learn how to connect to others. When we connect to ourselves in public, then we learn how to connect to everybody. And when we connect to, it's just learning how, kind of looping back to the beginning of this conversation, how to value connection instead of being a good singer or being a great teacher or being right or saying a cool thing. It's like, we're all going to die. And on our deathbed, am I going to be like, fuck yeah, I said all that cool shit? I mean, maybe. That'd be funny. And I would laugh. Or am I going to be like, I feel the world. I feel the world. And like, I want to name. I know quite a few people that actually just will die and only care about the cool shit they said. And that's okay.
Permission so for it all. Yeah. And
permission
so be
for it all. Yeah.
And so it is. That's what makes us so multifaceted as a species, as an organism on this planet. It's a part of the cosmos. We're multifaceted, to say the least. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Truly. And so why not show all those colors, Why not sing all those songs? Why not just like spin around in the sunshine and be like, look what I can do? Yes.
Have fun. Well, and we were talking about that earlier too. And I think that is something that you were really good at. And I would love to touch on that. You are an incredible mirror at embodying fun, joy, and that expression of self that's like, yeah, I'm here. I'm doing this because it feels good. And yes, fuck yes. Like, may we all feel that empowerment to liberate our pleasure, to liberate the activation that we so rightfully deserve to live in these human vessels that we get to wear for whatever time it is.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, in the Gene Keys, my life's work is ecstasy. And my purpose is bliss. So, like, I can't tell everybody that everyone gets to do the same thing, because I think everyone needs to be who they are. But I have a specific disposition for being a hedonist, to be honest. I'm just like, how can we make this feel better? And it comes and goes, like, I think my ability to feel joy is deeply mirrored by my ability to meet profound pain and grief. When it comes, like, I'm very fun, and I also deal with very, very severe chronic pain every day, and or the paradox could also look like I love a lot, and I've lost a lot of, I've lost all the love thus far, and then it just keeps there's more love, and that's how it goes. Right. And I think not being attached to either end of the spectrum is helpful. And kind of like part of the fear thing I was talking about, there's this like circle of capacity. And if I say I'm only willing to feel this much, then I'm going to miss the good and the bad on each side. But if I say I'm willing to feel more, then it includes the paradox. And so I think I've opened my window so wide to say I'm willing to feel it all, which means that, like, there's weeks where I'm like quitting. I'm going to quit everything. I'm going to get a job at the gas station. I'm going to delete. I'm going to throw my phone on the river, and I'm just going to be nobody. I'm just tired of being somebody. Fuck everything. And I'm going to get more cats. You know, like those weeks are incredibly real. And then there's weeks where I come back to the drawing board for all my projects, and I'm just like, how audacious of me to want to do all the things that I'm doing. Like, and then I come into this like adoration for myself. I'm like, how cute. You're so cute. You think you can just do all these things. That's adorable. Like, let's try, you know. And I have this like really sweet view of my life, and I oscillate between the two all the time, you know. And I think there's a similar with like the not getting in the way. It's a similar energy of like, whenever I feel something, I know it's going to change, so like might as well enjoy what's here right now, because I'll wake up tomorrow and feel different. And even so much so with like the grief or the depression or the anger. Lord knows I have an exquisite amount of anger. It comes out in my sex life. It's like, I'm just like, it's just there. And I'm like, wow, this is interesting. But like, it all shifts. And so when the good or the bad thing shows up, I think part of the ecstasy maybe is, just enjoying and trying to square up and meet whatever's here while it's here, because I know that it will leave. And even if like, let's say it's a house, someone comes over to your house and it's like a homeless person that's like taking all your items or something horrible like this. And not all houses folks do that. Anyways, it's a horrible example. Totally politically incorrect. Anyways, you get the picture. I'm going to like be with that person while they're there, you know? Similarly, when the love of your life walks in, maybe they don't live there, but they're there right now, and you just like square up and meet it. And I think as I'm saying this too, it's also like, who has time for that? Who has time to just like meet every wave as it comes with grace and willingness? And I don't know, I definitely don't do it all the time, but I think that's what can help the joy, is just like, yeah, we get this one life, we get this one moment, and there's all these things that suck. I can easily find all the things that are wrong in every situation. And for my own sanity, I've had to learn how to try to orient. Like, okay, I'm having gas. I have a horrible stomach ache or something like this. But like, wow, look at the Blue Jays are singing. Like, I'm just going to focus on that. I feel like I'm dying from the inside. And Blue Jays. Look at the fucking Blue Jays.
Yes.
You know?
1,000%. Yes. The pear trees, right? Like, that's a grounding force. I think nature is such a grounding force in that way. And I love that you do live in accordance with the land. You are living in Hood River. Like, that's ceremony all the time. Yeah.
I'm so grateful for this place. You know, like, we're just renting. And it's also one of those things that joy, you know, like, I've done festivals here. I've done retreats here. I've fallen in love twice now here. It's not mine. It's going to go away someday. I plant blueberry bushes that I'm not going to take with me when I go, and I do it anyways, because why not, you know? But I think when Stephen Jenkinson, are you familiar with Stephen Jenkinson? Mm-mm. He's phenomenally depressing and poetically beautiful. He's an author and a speaker, and he has books. He has a book called Die Wise and a book called Coming of Age, Elderhood for the Troubled Times. And
I read that.
I'm just so nourished by him, because he's kind of pessimistic in the most like almost erotic way. We're like, fuck, finally someone just said it, you know. And he speaks a lot about, a lot of us are kind of realizing, and we're practicing, you know, folks like you and me and many of your listeners, like, we want to be elders. We want to be folks that carry wisdom and are of service to the community. And then swallowing the shitty pill, like what that actually means. It's not getting paid all the time to show up. It's not, fame and fortune. It's like, how do we answer the hard questions? Right. But he talks a lot about, the only thing that makes life beautiful is the fact that it's short. Mm-hmm. And something that elders, what makes an elder different from an old person is a lot of his conversation. And an elder is somebody that enjoys and relishes in limitation. And you know what? I can't do that anymore. I can't walk up the stairs anymore. I can't drink anymore. Or they lean into the fact that of all that they cannot do as an act of wisening and ripening. Whereas a lot of old people are getting Botox and going golfing and having retreat centers just for themselves. And they're just preserving, maybe even fetishizing, like a youthfulness instead of squaring up to mortality in this way and being like, damn, okay, what would it feel like? Maybe going back to vocal empowerment, what would I say if I knew that I was going to die? What kind of songs would I sing if I knew that I was going to die? And it's the one thing that we know for certain. And, maybe even weaving in this conversation we had before the recording started of your friend who took their own life, when we really have those rememberings, whether by a loved one or just the world that we live in where people are dying all the time, like it's the only thing that is sure. And then when it happens, we're always so surprised. And I wonder, I just wonder,
Same. Yeah.
how we could live our lives if we were really oriented towards orienting towards valuing it as a precious, temporary, fleeting moment,
Mm-hmm.
We'd all be singing, that's for sure.
Absolutely. You don't know. We don't know when. And I think that could go into such a deeper conversation and into like existential kink, and then that embracing the death in every cycle, because it's coming to terms with that acceptance with we're going to be changing until we die, until we meet the other side. And so it's really that acceptance piece, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I've always been morbid, but I kind of think I have. Like, since I was a little girl, I've always been fascinated with death. And my father-in-law used to say, it's the only thing we're promised. It's death. And it's just coming to terms with that acceptance. And he passed 6 years ago. And it's the thing that I carry with me most. He was such a wise man and he said so many things, but it's what I hear most in my head from him. It's the only thing that we're promised.
Mm. Damn. And that's so true. And I always wonder, the only thing the cause of death was being born, right? And yet we come into this world with these extraneous fucking expectations. I'm never going to feel pain. I deserve to be loved all the time. I'm going to get everything that I want. Like, we have these huge expectations from life at an avoidance potentially of the just enjoy it while you got it, And that's like a lot of Steve. I would love for you to do a little dive into Stephen Jenkinson. He's adorable. I'm secretly in love with him. Not secretly. He's just an elder and he's just the cutest thing. And yeah, just so refreshing in an ecosystem of wisdom keepers that just aren't spitting it straight, Mm-hmm. I think we just kind of want to hear the truth, and he's a truth troubadour for sure. But yeah, I guess it just, I think we're maybe throughout this conversation, we're riding this precipice of like values, like what actually matters. You know, does it matter to you to feel connected to people, or does it matter that you're right? And a lot of people are going to answer that question differently. And I'm not to tell them that they're wrong. Or does it matter that you learn how to be of service to your community as you age, or does it matter that you just enjoy your life? Also, not here to tell anyone what to do, but I think for those of us that maybe lean a certain direction, you know, I think it's important to learn how to use the tools that we have, which voice and breath and community and kinship are definitely tools that can remind us of maybe the greater reality that we're living within, not just the one that's being bought and sold quite casually, you know?
Totally. Yeah. This has been such a juicy conversation. I'm so grateful for you. I love it. Can you tell people what kind of offerings you are providing constantly, anything that you have in the near future so they could potentially work with you if they're so interested? And yeah, I can't recommend Jenny enough. So I'll just say that before she gives a little spiel as to what she provides. But yeah.
I just really appreciate your kind words. It's always like, it's been a learning curve to like just receive love. Tell you what, it's much harder to receive than it is to give. So thank you for helping me learn how to receive.
Of course. Yeah.
I'm always doing bodywork and breathwork. Recently moved out of my Portland, Oregon office, and I'm working out of Hood River, Oregon, where I live. The home office is cute. I do breathwork circles and ceremonies for the community once a month. We're doing one for Beltane. I don't know when this podcast will come out. On May 30th. And then I'm going to launch the next round of the Truth Training 8-week online course soon. I don't want to like say a day because I'm learning how as an entrepreneur, I become like enslaved to my own deadlines. And I'm like, who do I even work for? Oh, I work for me. Okay. Well, let's just take it easy. In May, Truth Training is going to launch, or the doors will open, something like this in May, so that June, July will be the months that we are together, which will be interesting because people are busy for summer, and I'm also busy trying to get loud and get real. So, I feel really excited to kind of, every iteration of Truth Training specifically has been just cool. Like I'm just learning from everybody as much as they're learning from me. And, you know, like one day a week is a teaching and one day a week is the processing. So we meet twice a week for 8 weeks. And so we're learning. And then we're also just like holding counsel and being like, how does that feel? How is that showing up in your life? And so there's space for just like talking about the shit that we're learning so that it's not just like take notes and good luck, which really matters to me, that it's alive and that we get to have conversation about it. And it's fun and it's edgy, you know, and I'm as nice as I can be while I poke your buttons, but I'm definitely here to poke your buttons.
We need that. People need that. I think we do. Yeah. Like that's part of it. The whole process of staying curious and asking questions, and that we never know what we don't know.
Yeah. And so much of Truth Training is truly just like perspective shifts. Mm-hmm. You know, like, hey, maybe have you thought of it like this? Mm-hmm. Or let's just define the words empowerment. Let's just talk about the voice. What energy actually lives in your throat? Like there's so much curiosity that's met with just trying to define what we're even talking about, which is just, it's very orienting to like a lot of just talking. Mm-hmm. I talk a lot. I've talked a lot my whole life. I think in my like Jyotish or like Ayurvedic astrology. I'm like a double Gemini, and I'm like, fuck, that makes sense. And a Virgo, like so neurotic and so chatty. I feel like the Indian astrology is just like showing me my shadow side. But so be it. I'm here to love it. But yeah, so much of truth training is it's truly infinitely applicable. It shows up in your relationship. It shows up with how you relate to your body, first and foremost. It shows up in your workforce. It shows up in how you engage with the internet. It shows up in how you engage with the more than human relationships that you have. I mean, it's just, it's an understanding of like a way of living that, yeah, it's just like makes sense. And it's good for a lot of things. And so I think it's been fun to walk people through that and see different kinds of folks, mostly women, because for some reason we're like showing up for the work, or at least we're showing up for, I'm a female, people show up as females. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, it's really good. It's really good for learning how to live life more rooted in your center, and then getting to experience all the cool things that happen from that place, you know? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm here for it. And I love it. I love it. And I love that you're doing it. It's, yeah, no. If it's in alignment with my finances after I get back from Japan, you know I am in. And if it's not, then I'm still going to be doing one-on-ones with you, because that feels really right on for me. I really just, I love the way that you hold space, and I love the way you ask questions, and I like asking questions, but you ask questions that I haven't maybe asked myself, because you're another iteration of the cosmos, and it's fun. You had a different experience than me. So I'm grateful. One piece of wisdom, advice, any just kind offering that you can provide as a note, just a little love note as we close out this space today.
There's like 7 different voices in my head right now. I'm just like trying to quiet them. Something along the lines of like, who would you be if you weren't trying to be anybody?
Yep.
And be that person. And just live a good life, because it's all we got. I'm also like, I think about quitting all my jobs all the time, and it brings me deep joy. The whole gas station attendant thing is very real for me, as an experiment. But yeah, we're living in a world where there's a lot of trying to be somebody instead of just like being what already is. And so maybe, okay, there's 2 answers to this. The next one would be study yourself as is and get to know who you already are before you try to make change. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've done that many times where I've like, I've changed and then not let it integrate, not let the change integrate, and then just like, so I can change again. And then that leaves a whole mess to clean up.
Yeah. 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 I mean, astrology is great for that. Gene Keys is great for that. You know, there's like tools, if you like those tools, and if those tools don't work for you, you know, there's just like, you already, I guess, yeah, it's like we're all already somebody. I'm already somebody. I have preferences. This is what I like. This is what I don't like. This is what I do. This is what I don't do. You know, just like get to know what's already here and love the hell out of it. And then and then see what happens. See what you want to do after that.
So good. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. I appreciate you. And yeah, I hope y'all take note and hit Jenny up and have the sweet experience. Yeah, call her. Do it. You won't regret it, I promise. But thank you again for listening and for tuning in. I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your day. Thank you, Jenny. Hey there. It's Danae again. Just wanted to say thank you for sharing your time and energy with me. If this podcast resonates, please like, subscribe, follow, and share if you're willing. Reviews help too. So if you're feeling the vibe, please leave a review where you can. Sending all the love. Peace.